Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Newcastle City Council regular meeting for February 4th. The time is 7 o'clock. I'm Mayor Clark presiding. This meeting is being broadcast on our YouTube channel, and it is also being recorded for future viewing. A reminder to the audience, if you want to do public comment, which will come up first, please sign up on the sheet over on the table. Please rise and join us in the flag salute. City Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Burford. Is she on Zoom? Councilmember Sherlock.
Here.
Councilmember Griffin.
Here.
Councilmember Quigg.
Here.
Councilmember Charbonneau.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Lacotia. Here. And Mayor Clark.
Here.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yes.
May I make a motion to excuse Councilmember Burford?
Do I have a second? Okay, it's been moved and seconded to excuse Councilmember Burford. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, City Clerk, show that she is excused. Okay, moving on to agenda approval. Is there any desired changes or alterations to tonight's agenda? What? Oh. Pointing to the Zoom. Let's wait a second till she gets. Who's running the Zoom? City Clerk or Jeff? Okay. Okay. Councilmember Burford, can you hear us? Councilmember Burford, can you hear us? Councilmember Burford, can you hear us? What's your thoughts, Director Braun? Should we give up?
I'm at a loss. I can't tell if she can hear us or not.
Okay, she's already been excused. We're going to continue with the meeting. So, sorry, I'll say it again. Any alterations or changes to the agenda desired tonight? Okay, seeing none, show the agenda approved as written. Next up is public comment. City Clerk, anybody signed up for public comment? So if you're signed up, we'll invite you to the podium. You'll have 3 minutes to talk about whatever you'd like. The buzzer will sound at the end of 3 minutes and we ask you to wrap it up. Please state your name and neighborhood. Robert Henry, go ahead, Robert.
I'm Robert Henry.
Go ahead and turn on the microphone there.
The front, there we go. I'm Robert Henry. Our family lives in the Florida of Newcastle, which is to say the very southeast corner of Newcastle. I'm going to invert an aphorism about political scope that is attributed, albeit incorrectly, to the legendary House Speaker Tip O'Neill. I would like the Council to study the careful quantitative analyses made during the planning stages for shutting down portions of the federal government. These shutdowns started a few weeks ago and are expected to continue. Based on your understanding of these analyses, how do these shutdowns affect the city's budget for the coming year? How do they affect the city's 10-year plan, which you've worked so hard on? Can the city ensure that the roads crew is out and is able to respond to accurate snow forecasts in a timely manner? Can the city ensure that the coal mine and the tailings pile is operated in a safe manner? Can the city ensure our dogs' health when H1N1 makes the zoonotic jump to dogs and starts killing off our dogs? Can the city ensure that the agricultural policies and markets so we can continue to get enough eggs, butter, and flour so we can make, quote, cake, unquote, which Marie Antoinette called brioche? I'm sorry, it's personal. I'm sorry a little bit for the diatribe. We have a good friend whose daughter volunteered for the Peace Corps about 6 years ago and was sent to Ghana. When she came back with expertise on Central Africa, she joined USAID and is now deployed to Rwanda. Guess what? Her employer no longer exists. We're trying to exfiltrate her from the country and get her back to the U.S. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Next up is Stuart Blocker.
Stuart Blocker, Hazelwood neighborhood. I just wanted to voice a personal opinion that the council took 2 actions last council meeting of which I didn't agree with, those being the proclamation for the Chinese New Year. I don't think it's the purview of the city government to be involved in such things. We're all citizens of the United States of America under one flag, which we just pledged our allegiance to. So I disagree with that type of action as part of city government business. I also object to the passing of the project on Newcastle Way when this council, I think at best, had just barely a quorum. I'm not sure that the action is actually needed for that street anyway. I think it performs very well the way it is. I don't see any reason to incentivize crosstown traffic who are commuters to go any faster through our city. Safety needs to be more paramount in the minds of all of us, and you especially. So thank you.
Thank you. That concludes our public comment for the first half of the meeting. Moving on, there are no ceremonial presentations. Next up is council comment. Councilmember Griffin, go ahead and start us out.
Thank you, Mayor Clark. My comment this evening is directed at council and citizens and staff. Most of you have heard this said before from Mayor Clark, with the exception of Councilmember Quigg and Councilmember Burford. The flow chart for the city of Newcastle has the citizens being at the top of the flow chart. Underneath the citizens is the city council, and underneath the city council comes the city manager. Underneath the city manager comes the city staff. If it works like it was designed, the citizens have a voice in how the city runs. Though I have heard it said and seen it in writing that the citizens do not have a say in how the city is run. Folks, this is all wrong. The Rules and Procedures Manual clearly tells us how the city is supposed to work. And I think it works pretty well if we work it that way. You know, I've seen in the past where the citizens make a comment or they tell us how they'd like to see things go. We vote as a council some of us to do it the way they want to do it, and some of us don't. So I'm just putting this out there for you. Thank you for your time.
Councilmember Sherlock.
No comment.
Councilmember Charbonneau.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm to say excited to attend the Lunar New Year event this Sunday at Risen Middle School. I'm very excited for that. I just wanted to, because I assume it'll fly by in consent agenda, call out city manager work plan. I think there are a couple cool things that I think get overlooked that I appreciate city manager Pingle and the staff doing, updating our interlocal service agreements, saving us money there, working to get public works staff to the annex and prepare additional tenant space at City Hall, which we collect revenue from. That's really savvy move. And as well as even, looking at opportunities and, taking opportunity to house Mercer Valley Municipal Court. I think those are all things that have, objectively saved the city money and been really savvy moves. So we will likely approve this on consent agenda, but I just want to pick out those sort of items and give kudos where I feel like they're due.
Councilmember Quigg.
For some reason, when that plane crash happened recently, I thought of Pratima. And so proud of him. I'm glad you got home safe. I don't know what it was, but welcome home. I'm sure you had a great time with your family in India, but welcome home, Deputy Mayor Lakotia, and I'm happy to be here for my meeting.
Deputy Mayor Lakotia.
Thank you. I just wanted to wish everybody a very happy Lunar New Year. Thank you.
Okay, moving on, mayor comments. I just have a few. For the time being, there will be no changes in committee assignments. The next thing I have here, there was a public comment a few weeks ago, I don't remember the date, about flock cameras. So the standard operating procedure for that has been posted to the city website, so anybody can take a look at that. Honestly, I kind of sympathize with the comments that were made. I'm not necessarily advocate for the government to take a look at everything we do, but we have caught some bad guys with these cameras, so kind of on the fence there, but I think they've worked out well so far, and I'm glad that there's a procedure for that. Next thing I have here is there was a resident who inquired of the city about, right after the Los Angeles fire started, what were we doing or how would we prevent fires? So the fire chief of Bellevue was very kind enough to send her a lengthy reply, which is public knowledge. So if anybody wanted, I'm not going to read it, but basically we don't have the same circumstances or situation that Los Angeles would have, and the chances of catastrophic fires are pretty minimal. And our fire station is right down the road, but if anybody wants to see his reply, I'm sure we can get that to you. Be happy to do that. But, I'm sorry. Okay, certainly, Robert. Okay, and the last thing is, during the windstorm where we lost power, Newcastle didn't fare, terribly, right? We had some things we had to take care of, but overall expense-wise, it wasn't, too significant. But our sister cities had a lot of issues, especially Issaquah. So the mayor of Issaquah asked me as a mayor to sign on to a letter to the governor asking that they expedite or don't lose track of the request for FEMA funding. So the FEMA funding request had been made during the Biden administration, but it had not been completed. So she simply wanted, to put a kind of a push on this to remind the new governor of Washington to ask the Trump administration. So I signed my name as the mayor of Newcastle. There's several mayors that signed. Even though this process was still already ongoing, I felt it was important to support our sister city. And that's it for mayor comments for me. Then moving on to the next thing up is the fourth quarter capital improvement project. So Director Bronze, I believe you have a quick super update for us, and then we'll have questions.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. Just wanted to, the CIP update is in your packets, and it has a complete update of all the active capital projects. And new this quarter are updates to the two facility projects, the annex modifications and also the City Hall and annex building generators. So just to highlight for some achievements for 2024, we completed a pavement overlay on 116th, 112th, and May Creek Park Drive, and we had over a $1 million, just over $1 million grant. That's the largest single grant in the 10 years I've been at the city. So that was excellent work. We also completed new sidewalks on 112th Avenue Southeast, and here's a before and after right there at the Shell Station to kind of show the dramatic change in the streetscape. As part of the project, we closed that driveway nearest to the intersection to provide less congestion right at the intersection. We also added, you can't really see it in this photo, but right here is a new RRFB, which is rectangular rapid flashing beacon, which is like right out here in front of City Hall, a new crosswalk crossing the south leg of the intersection. Similarly, we constructed sidewalks on May Creek Park Drive on the north-hand side. Here's a before and after. So now there's continuous sidewalk on May Creek Park Drive from 116th all the way to the southeast 84th roundabout, and you can then go up 84th and make a continuous circuit all the way out to back to 116th again. The final segment from the roundabout to I just forgot the name of the subdivision, just east of the Revival Center is going to complete the final gap on that corridor. So then we'll have a continuous, if you're to, that'd be an ambitious walk, but to go from Coal Creek to Newcastle Way to 116th to May Creek Park Drive. It's probably about a 3-mile loop. Parks, 2 big projects. The biggest one was the Boardwalk project and connecting to the Esplanade to the east. That was 1.3 million of grants. That was 2 grants. We had $500,000 from King County Parks Levy and $800,000 from the legislative capital budget that our lobbyists helped arrange. And then the fishing dock, we are able to, it's not super clear in the photos, but the left photo shows the corner, the south corner in the water, and the middle photo shows it out of the water. And a nice photo from yesterday in the snow. That one also had $60,000 worth of grants, also secured in part by our legislative assistants, our lobbyists. And then a achievement on our S17 project, the Newport Hills embankment removal. The design is essentially complete. We are just waiting for the permits at the Department of Ecology and the Army Corps of Engineers to be approved. So we call it 99.8% complete. And a significant achievement, we have grant funds to fully fund the construction phase, including the May Creek Trail Bridge. So that totals just about $5.8 million. So we're currently targeting potentially 2027 or 2028 to construct that project. And be happy to answer any other questions you might have.
Okay, are there any questions for Director Bronze on any of these projects? Raise your hand and go ahead, Councilmember Quick.
Is your lobbyist working on commission? So it's $5.8 million in grants for that last project. How does that, can you explain the grant system and how we get dollars for all this, please?
So the lobbyists did not work on that project. Those were all applications, and there's 3 grants from the King County Flood Control District, which Reagan Dunn is the chair of that commission. So we have 3 successive grants, $500,000, $1 million, and $1.5 million. Oh, thank you. And those were awarded in 3 years. The Flood Control District have been very supportive of the project. The maximum grant amount is $1.5 million. So I think we'd ask for 1.5 each year. And the first year, 500,000, the next year, $1 million, next year, 1.5 million. And they will allow those to extend to be able to total that project. And we have $750,000. I'm sorry. Actually, it was $750,000, $1 million, and then $1.5 million from the Flood Control District. And then we have a $2.5 million and change grant, a FEMA grant, a high hazard dam grant that is processed by the Department of Ecology. And that one, we're still in the application project. It's kind of like it's been allocated, but it's going through the whole, it's a very detailed paperwork process with FEMA to get that grant application completed.
That's outstanding. I'm just wondering, 2 questions. One, percentage-wise, what percent of all the projects that you've been working on are covered by these grants that we're getting, which is awesome, the grants are coming in. And just referencing the comment that was made earlier, do we see any changes in grants coming our way in the next couple of years, or how do you feel about that?
Total, I'd say if you're to total all the capital expenditures in 2024 versus the grant, I would guess the grants probably cover maybe 12%. So we've been successful in the stormwater area, very successful over the years. And then second success has been in the parks. And the parks have been due to the King County levy, Parks levy, as well as our legislative support, the lobbyists. Transportation, less so, just because it's so much more competitive. We did secure an unexpected $500,000 grant for the T33 project that is going to be constructed later this year, and that was from the Transportation Improvement Board. And I don't see any, the biggest change in grants, or the big successes grants, is how you compare to the competition. So I think the TIB this year, we just happened to luck out and that there weren't a lot of other great projects ahead of us, because usually for that grant program, it's safety related, and it's fortunate that we don't have a lot of collisions, but that then makes ours less competitive. But I don't see the amounts being, in terms of that comment, that's been rescinded, so it's not affecting us at the moment.
Any other comments or questions? I just have one. The cemetery fence, under your line item, 2025 shows $0. We are going to do that this year, right?
Did I put? Oh, I think, well, it's got 0 budget because we have to carry that forward. We expected it to be, year-end forecast, so that's a typo on my part.
Okay, so it's going to be done.
Yeah, we're waiting, the contract's been awarded, we're waiting for the contractor submittals. They were supposed to come in on Friday, I just heard today they're supposed to be in tomorrow. We'll review them, and then they should be able to be out there starting work. We expect that to be done, I'll be conservative and say done by the end of March, and then we'll get we have grants to cover the whole cost of that.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Thank you, Director Bruns. So next up on our agenda, council committees. Finance Committee?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Clark. The Finance Committee had a meeting on Wednesday, the 29th of January, where Director Chambers brought a healthy snapshot of the city that the city is doing financially well. And then she brought a good report on how the monies invested have been doing. We received a report from her also regarding the B&O tax. It looks like this wouldn't pencil out at this time because it would cost more to handle the recording and the auditing of the B&O tax than what it would cost the city to receive the tax. So at this point, we put that on hold. The Finance Committee did approve a contract with the consulting firm PACE for training, cleaning, and inspecting the stormwater system. And that's what we had for our meeting.
Okay, any other council committees? Okay, how about regional committees? Go ahead, Councilmember Charbonneau.
Thank you. Attended the Sound City Association Public Issues Committee, which is the big regional one. Not too much. There were a lot of new members, so they were, I think, intentionally trying to keep it light. They just talked about, they've had our new staff member, so heads up for communications you might receive, or if anyone's on any other committees. And then they're continuing to recruit for their executive director, which is ongoing. And then January 23rd, Mental Illness Drug Dependency Committee. We went over the financial plan and update for the committee and the revenue that's generated from that. You know, the money that's doled out to different nonprofits and organizations in this space, and they're hosting community listening sessions for all around the county for folks that have input on our behavioral health system. So if you have interest in that or any questions about that, please let me know.
Any other regional committees? Okay, so in my case, the North Mayor's Group has not yet met this year. We're still planning on when that first meeting will be. There's been some changes in the Sound City's personnel, so keep you updated. Next up is commission reports. There are no commission reports tonight. And then city manager update. City manager?
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, council. A couple of things. Our latest legislative report from our lobbyist is in the packet. I just wanted to highlight a couple of things for the public's benefit, but that is in the packet online for your benefit. Representative Mielentai as well as Representative Janice Zahn, they're sponsoring a bill on REIT flexibility. Essentially, and that's one of our legislative priorities, specifically using the language that we suggested to them. Really what we're trying to do with REIT flexibility is it's currently, you can currently use REIT for affordable housing. However, it has to be tied to a 6-year capital improvement plan. And where we partner with Arch, that's just not how we roll. With Arch, they put out an application process every year. Applications are received and reviewed and then awarded. And so there's no capital improvement plan or capital facilities plan to tie those dollars to. And so really what we're after is getting flexibility there so that we can use REIT dollars for affordable housing in the way that we do affordable housing with Arch. There's another bill that looks to loosen REIT otherwise, I think in ways that would benefit us also. The challenge is that the bills will probably compete with one another, and one will go and one won't. And so we'll see how that goes. We like our changes first just because those are Newcastle specific, but getting some flexibility and loosening of how we can use REIT would be beneficial. Really for us, our approach to that has been as we're trying to remove dollars from the general fund, having to be spent out of the general fund. And so if we can spend non-general fund dollars, we want to spend non-general fund dollars. I put out to the council, we got the question from the AWC Executive Director on the district that we belong to in AWC. For the Sound Cities Association, we belong to the North Caucus, but we're in District 13 with the Association of Washington Cities, which is all of the South King cities. And she simply asked the question of whether we thought we should have consistency there, where with SCA we're in the north and with AWC we're in the south. Do we want to move to District 7, which would be the North King County district for AWC? And really, when you look at those cities, it'd be nice to have consistency, but also being a council manager city, being a mid-sized council manager city, there's more cities in the north like us than there are in the south. The south is more larger, strong mayor cities. And so this is not a huge deal, but they're asking if we have a preference and if we want to make a move with from District 13 to District 7 in AWC. And so just putting that in front of the council, if we feel heavily, I think it makes sense to make the move to the North District in AWC. But like I said, I don't think it's a huge issue.
Councilmember Charbonneau?
Thank you. Yeah, so I think it's interesting where we're kind of I think we're considered the tweener city, right? Whereas Renton is considered South King County, Bellevue is considered East Side. I would classify us as East Side, but then that's, when you look at north goes all the way to Kenmore Bothell area. So yeah, we're north for Sound City Association, which I think they have like 4 or 5 different ones and some really specific ones like Snoqualmie Valley, like the Black Diamond area. There's another name for it too. I forget what that area is called, but like that Black Diamond Maple Valley area. I think personally, in my experience, having gone to an AWC conference and been to some of their sessions, the reason I like being in the one we are currently in, the South, is because our person for the South is Mayor Nancy Bacchus of Auburn, who is a very long time public servant who's very responsive when I've asked her to about things, and sits on a lot of different regional groups. She's a strong mayor. I think she does a really good job with all sides of politics and navigating that. So I find it very beneficial to have her as our representative. I don't know who would be our representative if we were to move to the north, but she's been very responsive. I think a very good representative in terms of AWC in representing us. So that would be my 2 cents.
Any other thoughts on what Council or City Manager said? Councilmember Quigg?
Thank you, Scott. I emailed you about this issue because I didn't really understand it. Help me understand this. There's 2 different groups. One of them is strong mayor cities. The other one is strong city manager cities. I think that's the distinction. Paul says there's a distinction because we know the leader from one and we don't know the leader from the other. Can you just flesh that out a little bit?
Sure.
It's a concept that I'd never heard before, Scott, which is strong mayor cities versus strong city manager cities. I just want to understand that. I really don't have a dog in this fight. I'm just curious.
Yep. So most of the cities in the South, District 13, which we currently belong to in AWC, includes Kent, Auburn, Federal Way, Renton. So larger cities where they directly elect their mayor, and the mayor is the chief executive officer of the city. Where in Newcastle, we're a council manager city, where the city council is directly elected, and you choose a mayor from amongst yourselves every 2 years, and the city council hires a city manager as the chief executive officer.
Councilmember Sherlock?
Thank you. And just to further explain a little bit, so AWC is Association of Washington Cities, so it's all the cities in the state of Washington. SCA is Sound Cities Association, so it's really just the Puget Sound area minus Seattle.
And like I said, I can let them know we don't have a preference. We'll leave it alone. If we don't feel strongly, I'll let them know we don't feel strongly. Just leave it alone.
Well, So thank you, Councilor Charbonneau. I appreciate the experience that you have with there and your opinion there. I do feel, though, however, we should realign and be with the same group of cities in both situations, right? Because we already deal with them in one category, and the city manager, mayor format is important as well. So probably doesn't really affect things, but I think if we have an option to make a change, I would advocate for a change, you know? So I think at this point, let's just put it to a vote, right? Any objections to just calling a roll on whether we move or change? Okay. All in favor of moving to the District 7, is it? Raise your hand. Okay, opposed? Okay, so 5-1, we'll move to District 7. Thank you, City Manager. Give it.
I will just briefly, since we weren't able to get Sun with Sound, she attended the last District 13.
Oh, okay, I'm here
There she
too.
is. Oh, yeah,
I'm here.
she's there. And she can speak to it as well, but Sun had reported to me that in attending that, they had presented that possibility to her as well, and I'll let her speak for herself now that she's on, but she had agreed with the 5 of you.
Okay. Well, we did have we have a majority vote, so we will go to District 7, so. Okay, thank you, City. Any additional comments, City Manager?
Yeah, I will just say, so Chief Hagan, our fire chief, his response to the resident that had questions about wildfires, it was kind of in the form of a letter back to her, and so we were talking about how we can disseminate that in an
Okay.
effective way, and so we'll get that out so that it's posted for the public.
Okay, thank you. All right, next up is a consent agenda. Any objections or alterations desired to the consent agenda? Okay, seeing none, show the consent agenda approved as written. We have no public hearings tonight. We have no unfinished business. We have one general business item, item 11.1, a motion to rescind approved resolution 2025-1022 Newcastle Way widening design contract approval. So this item was requested to be on the planning calendar, then the agenda by Councilmember Quigg. Councilmember Quigg, please start out the discussion on this.
How much time do I have, Mayor?
Well,
All right.
Unrelated
I just scared everybody in the room, didn't I?
I'd cut you off at an hour.
It won't take that long, I promise. I'm going to get to this in 1 second. This came up in my first meeting with the council, and I heard about the road widening project. And it's an area I know well. I'll explain. I live up in Olympus with some fabulous people, Lynn Prevett, hello there. And on nice days, I like to get home, throw on my shorts, get my son, and we bicycle down to Safeway and get one of those gourmet lollipops. We don't care about the lollipop, but it's some good kid bonding time, so we go down there all the time. Recently, he gets on his scooter, goes with his kids, the other kids in the neighborhood. They scooter down to Hazelwood Elementary all the time when it's sunny, and I follow them down. So I've gone on that street 100 times. It's on my way to work. My daughter, she's applying to work at the Swim and Tennis Club at the Snack Shack. We go down there all the time for swimming and tennis and pickleball. That's a street I travel all the time, pretty much multiple times a day. I don't know China Creek really well, don't know the reserve, don't know Highlands all that well, don't know Winter. There's a lot of areas I don't know. I do know that street really, really well. So when I heard that we were going to, do this project there, it got my attention. Well, that's my backyard. I travel that all the time. I've, used the bicycle lanes 100 times. Well, sometimes the bicycle lanes, sometimes the other side. Walked it many times with my wife and kids. And so I want to understand what we were doing. I said, can we have some time to look at this? I want to study it more. And Jeff said, yeah, let's, we're not in a big hurry. It's going to be a 2030 project. Let's take a look at it. So I started asking if people had heard about it. Surprisingly, nobody had heard about this project, except for a council member, and she had strong feelings on the matter and shared, her thoughts on it. And so I studied it, and I was trying to find some way to figure out what my position is on this issue, Mr. Mayor. And this, you ever heard of Neil deGrasse Tyson? Brilliant scientist. I listen to his, when I can't go to sleep at night, I pull up his YouTube shorts and just listen to it and try to learn stuff. He talked about these walkways. These are called desire paths. I bet you Jeff Bronze knows which the desire paths are. What it is when engineers are trying to figure out where to build roads and walkways and pathways, there was a Ohio State University engineering team, and instead of building the walkways immediately, they let the students travel the paths through the winter. And then in 1914, got in an air balloon, went up, and they looked down, and they saw where the students were walking. And they built the damn paths where the students were walking, so they would use the paths. The reason I asked you if I could have some time, and the reason I'm saying all this is for the following. I know the area very well. And I just want to make sure that if we're going to spend $13 million on something that it's something we need. If we need it. But also, if it's something the public wants, and I understand that in the contract we're signing, the company is going to do an open house and meet with people and kind of display their findings and such. I'm wondering, can we do kind of that on the front end? Ask people what they think that, that drive by Donegal and down 123rd and such, and because this is a lot of money. And if we're going to spend $200,000, on a project that's ultimately going to cost $13 million, maybe more, I don't know. I'm not opposed to spending dollars where we need them. I believe this is the most expensive item on our Public Works agenda. And I know there's money from different buckets, Mr. Mayor, but I'm just wondering, is this a project that we need and want right now? And that's what I'm asking. That's why I asked for time to study it. That's why I've asked if anybody's heard about it. Do we want to ask people if they want and need this, or if there's other things that maybe, $13 million could help with? That's why I asked for us to take a second look at this. I don't like the word rescind. It makes it sound like I want to kill it. I just want to take a look at it. In our HOA, we spend a lot of time before we spend money, and we bid things and we make sure we're spending as little money as possible. And I'm sure that's happened already. It's just, that's still a big chunk of change in my book. So I just want to take a hard look at it is all I'm saying. So that's why I asked to take a look at this, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Charbonneau.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to share some facts about this particular project. I personally believe there's been a deal of understanding. So what this is a pre-design phase. So this is not the construction of the project. This is not the bid approval for the project. This is not the design element of the project. This is the pre-design. So it's quite early. So folks are throwing around the $13 million figure. That would include, that, by the way, is based on a lot of different options we can choose along this. That's not what this is. This is a vote on spending $188,000. This is not a vote on spending $13 million. There will be subsequent votes years down the line where we can talk about approving a future bid. We can talk about approving a future design. That's not this. This is not $13 million. Do not be scared by that figure when we have a lot of projects that transportation projects are multi-million-dollar projects because the nature of what they are, building a sidewalk, laying concrete, all that, the labor for that, right? You talked about spending time, right, and spending time on this. This has been in the plans for the Public Works Department since 2002 with the city. This has been something that has been long looked at as something they wanted to improve and something they wanted to work on. So it was an item on consent agenda because it was relatively something that would be more routine, right? Starting this very early phase of a project that has been in the docket for over 20 years to be considered. So folks talk about maybe wanting to spend this money somewhere else, and you might hear that, right? 85% of this is coming from transportation impact fees, and the other 15% is coming from SWIM, stormwater management fees. Those are two very specific buckets of money that you cannot spend on a ton of other things, right? This is not coming, you heard our city manager say earlier, we try not to spend general fund dollars when we can, because general fund dollars have the greatest flexibility. These are funds that don't have a lot of flexibility. They're used for projects like this that are a $200,000, not even $200,000, $188,000 pre-design phase. So when you say you want to spend on other things, this is what this money is for. You talk about, going through this pre-design project. I think Director Bronze did a really good job earlier describing all the grants that we've got through the city. we are not eligible for a grant for a project like this unless we do the pre-design phase. People are not going to dole out large sums of money to a city for a project that we just say we want to do this or we like this idea. You need to be able to present them with something. And not only is this a pre-design phase for this project, it would give us data that we would use for other transportation projects as well on our transportation improvement plan. So I do believe there's a lot of misconception about this. I do think this is relatively routine thing we would approve, and we have approved a lot of things of this nature before. I think it's become overly politicized for a pretty small project. I'm not in support of rescinding this whatsoever. I think it's a good project that improves pedestrian safety, improves driver safety on one of our most, in the long term, and this wouldn't be built for quite a while, on one of our most heavily used roads. So I'm very supportive of this. I wanted to dispel what I think is some misunderstanding. And this specific pre-design phase moving forward, I think is really critical to support.
Councilmember Griffin?
We have a history of hiring consultants and having consultants go out and do studies for us. And that's not following the study that is recommended by the consultants. We have a history of that, guys. This sounds like that we're looking at a similar situation. We're going to spend $188,000, $185,000 for a project that we may or may not build. We don't even, probably the number of people I've talked to about it, they hadn't heard of it. They don't believe it's needed. And so we don't even know what the original plan was. We've asked about it, and well, Director Bronze didn't know about it. He didn't know what it was on the books when he took the job. And we don't even know that where the dividing line between Newcastle and Bellevue is. We may be tackling a project that has a bunch of Bellevue problems for us. So if we're going to do something, we need to know what it is we're doing, and really, does the people of the Newcastle want it? You know, most people I've talked to says, that's ridiculous, spending that kind of money on that street. The first time I asked about it, I was told that there's so many accidents there, that's the reason that we have it. That's not true. They don't have that many accidents on that nine block area. I was looking at the report the other day, 5 years from 2013 to 2017, there were 0 fatal accidents in that stretch there. I've lived there 46 plus 3 months in my house, and I've only seen 1 accident that happened on the 125th in all that time I've been there. So it looks to me like that maybe we ought to forget jumping in and spending money on something that we're not ready to build. That would be my suggestion.
Councilmember Sherlock?
Thank you. So a couple of things I just need to say out loud. I've lived here since 2013, and I live right behind you. And I've personally seen at least 3 accidents. Yes, they're not fatal, thank goodness. One of them was my family, not that long ago. So just because you haven't seen the accidents doesn't mean they're not happening, first of all. Second of all, I would love to hear Director Bronze address your comments at the beginning, or excuse me, Councilmember Griffin's comments. Because my conversations with Dr. Bronze, he knows exactly where all the lines are, and he's well versed on this project. So, Director Bronze, can you please?
No, I'm sorry, Robert. We'll have a public comment at the end. Director Bronze, do you have something you'd like to add?
Yes, thank you, Councilmember Sherlock. I was actually kind of curious about Councilmember Griffin's comments because we know exactly where the city limit is, so I'm not sure what you might have been referring to. And I know about the project history, so I'm not sure what that was referring to. We do have a history of doing pre-design, preliminary design work, and then following it up with final design and construction, and those are highlighted on the screen here. the May Creek Park Drive corridor. We've done that on 2 separate instances, T47 study, and then construction in 2 phase, T33 study, construction. The second phase will be done this year. And then we did it for the bus shelter. We did some study analysis on with the location, then we constructed that in 2023. Similar for T42 and T44. The only study that I'd say that is not necessarily something that's going to be used in the near future, that was actually directed to staff by the council, and that was the T42 looking at the intersection of 116th and Newcastle Way. So that's the only study that was done that I would say is one that was on the shelf, and that was directed by council.
Thank you, Director Bronze. Any additional questions, or excuse me, comments? Okay, I'll have a couple. So it's probably true to say that any road in Newcastle has an accident at some point in history. So if we were to say that we need to fix this or fix that to avoid an accident, we'd fix every road in Newcastle and we'd add, 20-foot guardrails and pads and everything else, right? Because you can't prevent accidents. So undoubtedly, there's been accidents on this road, for sure. So the projects that Director Bronze just had up on the screen there were vetted and talked about by the council, and we had a valid reason to proceed with the example May Creek Park Drive. We all agreed that that was a critical corridor that was seeing more traffic. It had no sidewalks. There was a lot of safety concerns, so we all agreed, and then we did studies, and then we did the work. We haven't had any agreement on why we need to widen this section of Newcastle Way. And if we spend this money now, and then later on somebody will say, well, we spent money already. We got to keep spending money, right? That's how the government works. So in June of this year, and every year, we talk about the transportation projects. So last year in June, and I mentioned this at the last meeting, we pushed this project back to the very end of the 6-year window because we didn't have a clear reason why we wanted to do it. And that's still the case. So again, in June, if we have a public outcry to do this project, or we have public testimony demanding that we do this project, we can revisit it, and then we can still come back later and do this study. But for the time being, there's no compelling reason to widen this section of the road, and therefore, we don't need to spend any money. That's my personal opinion, that we don't need to spend any money now. We can always come back in the future and do a study if this council decides that it's really critical, which we didn't do last year, same council, or the public demands that we widen this road. But there's plenty of other things, and I'm going to say it, that we can spend money on that would provide more of a return in a quicker way. So I'm voting against this, to rescind this. I voted against it last time it was up. We had a short council, probably wouldn't have passed if we had a full council, but here we are again, and my personal opinion is to rescind this one, and we'll address it again when the appropriate time comes. So, seeing no other comments, do I have a motion on the floor?
Is it written down somewhere for me?
Yes.
Because this would be my first motion. Thank you, President. I move to rescind approved resolution 2025-1022, approving a design contract, thank you, with David Evans and Associates Incorporated.
Second?
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to rescind Resolution 2025-1022, approving a design contract with David Evans and Associates. Councilmember Quigg, you want to speak to your motion?
I already have, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Councilmember Griffin, you want to add?
We've heard enough of it.
Okay, so once again, motion on the floor is to rescind the Resolution 2025-1022, approving a design contract with David Evans and Associates. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Okay, motion passes 4-2. Okay, moving on. Next thing up is additional public comment. So, City Clerk, do we have anybody signed up for the second public comment? I would encourage everybody to please sign up before this point in time in the future. If you didn't pre-sign up, you only have 3 seconds for your second public comment. Just kidding.
You can subtract this signing up time.
Okay, just like the first public comment, you'll have 3 minutes to speak. When the buzzer goes off, we ask you to wrap it up, and please state your name and neighborhood. Robert Henry, come on up. Go ahead and turn on the mic, please.
Robert Henry, I'm still from the Florida of Newcastle, although the palm trees haven't grown any higher in the time I've been gone. Believe it or not, as a retired computer scientist, I have spent many hours in the last few days looking at the federal fatal accident reporting system, trying to collect data about, in my case, Southeast May Valley Road, which is kind of well known by the neighborhood as being a bloodbath. I've identified 7 fatals along that road in the space of the last 50 years, and have identified more details about the 2 which are closest to me, which I happen to be paranoid about because of the state of May Valley Road. You'll hear more from me in a few months. I want to thank Ariana for reading my mind, saying that we shouldn't be focused on fatals, okay? And I think it's really sad that we do that. And unfortunately, that's what it takes to get public money to flow to fix things like traffic lights or installed traffic lights, is it takes 1 death per installed traffic light, basically, which is really tragic. It's more important to look at the kind of accidents, how often the same accident repeats at the same place, and then go from that, and then look out over the space of the whole community and look for identical roads before you can do any meaningful rate comparisons. I'm not a civil engineer. I have email I was composing the last 30 minutes because I feared I would leave before I could buttonhole Jeff over here. So maybe he can train me a little bit in the future about how to analyze the data to produce numbers which may be supportive or not. Again, I'm not a professional, I'm an amateur. I think I should say I'm fired up working on the federal data because I'm afraid that it will be removed shortly by our friend from South Africa.
Thank you, Robert. Next up, Brad Corner.
Brad Corner of Reserve. I spoke at the last meeting and said that your governance was appalling for taking the vote. Thank you for your rescission vote tonight. When you're talking about a prelude of $250,000 for studies, that then implies you're going to go on and spend $13 million for a road widening project and just answer this after a consultant? I'm just absolutely amazed you did what you did last time. You have a transportation period in June. To the minority members that were against this rescission, get the stats from the police department. This is things you can do yourself. You don't have to hire an engineer to come out and tell you what is common sense. Get the stats in terms of the accidents. Number 2, if you're going to plan on a $13 million project, did anybody, because I've asked, consider calling Bellevue up and meeting with them and walking the site and find out if there's any interest in a interlocal agreement and split fund the project? Didn't hear that from anybody. So there's more work to do that I think the council with your staff can do to bring this to the public's attention at a hearing in the middle part of the year so that we have much more in the way of facts. Not just relying on consultants and big contracts that are single sourced. I mean, this is common sense stuff. Thank you again for your rescission vote.
Okay, thank you, Brad. That concludes the second public comment. Next up, planning calendar. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. For the next meeting, we'll have a couple of year-end reports, our year-end financial report and the fourth quarter or year-end crime stats report. We also have a study session where we'll look at the traffic monitoring plan, condition of approval for the tool development and what that might look like, and making sure we have a good discussion about that. And then again, looking forward, we'll look at bringing our housekeeping budget amendment to the council at the first meeting in March. And then, as you're aware, the Planning Commission has not made a recommendation on the comp plan yet, and so tentatively that's put on the second meeting in March to come to the council. happy to take any questions.
Everybody, excuse me, Councilmember Sharp, let everybody know that the study session will be included in the regular meeting. We're not meeting early for that. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, just curious, I know, so the comprehensive plan did pass the planning commission. I know their next meeting is February 26th. What was I was curious the reasoning for putting the adoption of it on the 18th as opposed to the 4th? I don't have strong feelings one way or the other. I just want to know what we were thinking.
Just turnaround time. So that meeting, that planning commission meeting will be on a Wednesday, where then we would have to turn around packet materials for the council in less than a day.
Gotcha. Sounds good. Thank you.
Any other questions for the city manager on the planning calendar? Okay, seeing none, we are adjourned.